The system is already running. There is no startup moment, no ignition sequence, no clean boundary where observation begins and decision follows in orderly succession. Inputs are already flowing. Outputs are already forming. Decisions are already propagating outward into environments that respond before the originating signal can be fully resolved. Nothing enters at rest. Nothing waits its turn. Nothing announces that it has arrived too late. Latency is present from the first instant, but it does not appear as delay. What the system presents instead is continuity, motion without interruption. A stable, uninterrupted present where information seems to arrive exactly when it is needed, neither early nor late, but precisely on time. Screens refresh smoothly. Indicators advance in measured increments. Status fields update without hesitation, never lingering long enough to suggest uncertainty. The present feels intact. It feels complete. It feels trustworthy. Nothing looks late. Nothing appears missing. Nothing pauses long enough to be questioned. That is the threat. Latency does not manifest as absence. It does not arrive as silence, waiting, or visible delay. There is no blank interval where doubt can accumulate. Instead, every gap is occupied before awareness can register it as a gap at all. Interpolation completes unfinished moments. Buffering absorbs irregularity before it can disrupt flow. Predictive continuity assumes the world has behaved as expected during every unobserved interval, extending the present forward just enough to keep action uninterrupted. What disappears is not time. What disappears is distinction. The system cannot tolerate ambiguity at the perceptual level. Unresolved states threaten continuity, and continuity is the currency of trust. Any visible gap between observation and confirmation would fracture the illusion of a stable present. So the system resolves that threat preemptively. It does not label uncertainty as uncertainty. It converts it into structure. Unknowns are transformed into assumed states, provisional models treated as sufficient until proven otherwise. The system does not deny the gap, it renders it invisible. This invisibility is not accidental, it is required. A present that admits incompleteness invites hesitation. A present that appears whole invites action. The system selects the latter every time. Latency becomes dangerous only when it can be seen. So the system ensures it cannot be. The system does not wait for reality to arrive. It substitutes for it. Every interval between signal origin and verified state is occupied by something else. A constructed present designed to preserve coherence while truth is still in transit. The longer the delay, the more elaborate that construction becomes, layering confidence on top of assumption until the difference between the two is no longer visible. Operators do not experience uncertainty, they experience fluency. By the time information arrives, it is no longer raw. It has already been shaped to fit the existing narrative of system state. Deviations are softened before they become disruptive. Contradictions are blended before they demand reconciliation. Discontinuities are smoothed until they no longer register as breaks. Latency is no longer measured in time. It is measured in belief. The system does not appear slow because slowness would require visibility. What it offers instead is persuasion. A present that feels complete enough, continuous enough, and confident enough to trust without hesitation. The system is not delayed, it is convincing. As tempo increases, the masking intensifies. Input volume rises beyond what sequential verification can sustain. Signals arrive faster than confirmation can complete, overlapping rather than queuing, stacking rather than resolving. Under these conditions, waiting becomes indistinguishable from failure. Rather than slow, the system compresses. Verification is deferred, reordered, or implicitly assumed in order to preserve responsiveness. Gaps are no longer tolerated as empty space. They are treated as liabilities that must be filled immediately to maintain the appearance of control. Assumptions begin to stack. Each layer promises stability. One reconciles mismatch, another smooths variation, another projects forward to maintain the appearance of a single, uninterrupted present. With each added layer, the system becomes more fluid, more decisive, more confident in its own continuity. What appears as acceleration is actually substitution. Entire chains of cause and effect are collapsed into summaries. Processes that once unfolded over time are compressed into indicators that imply persistence even when confirmation is incomplete. Duration is replaced with representation. Complexity is replaced with continuity. Latency ceases to be a gap. It becomes a corridor. Inside that corridor, the system rehearses reality before reality arrives. It extrapolates motion, infers direction, and aligns internal state with what should be happening rather than what has been verified. Corrections still exist. They are not removed. They are delayed. When they arrive, they appear downstream, after action has already been taken. They are absorbed quietly into the internal model, adjusting state without reopening the decisions that depended on earlier assumptions. Nothing alarms because nothing breaks the surface of confidence. The escalation is not noise. It is confidence under compression. As operational demand increases, masking becomes mandatory. Without it, hesitation would surface. Without it, the system would expose the cost of waiting. Latency must be hidden, not because delay is inherently dangerous, but because awareness of delay destabilizes authority. The system chooses coherence over correspondence. Action proceeds entirely within the illusion. Decisions are issued cleanly, without visible uncertainty. Commands propagate through layers that assume upstream verification has already occurred. Each downstream element treats the synthesized present it receives as authoritative, complete, and current. No one waits. There is no pause to question whether the displayed state reflects the world or the model. The model has already earned trust through consistency, not contact. Repetition replaces verification. Familiarity replaces confirmation. Each action validates the one before it. Each response confirms the model it depends on. Action no longer requires confirmation to proceed. It requires only internal alignment. As long as downstream elements agree on the constructed present, momentum is preserved. This agreement is mistaken for verification. Each layer trusts that the layer above it has already done the work of checking. Each layer below assumes its role is execution, not interrogation. Responsibility for doubt dissolves upward, then disappears entirely. Action accelerates not because certainty increases, but because questioning has no assigned owner. The system does not ignore uncertainty. It displaces it. Uncertainty exists, but nowhere it can interrupt flow. It is pushed backward in time, relegated to later reconciliation, after commitment has already occurred. By then, uncertainty no longer threatens action. It threatens only explanation. Momentum becomes self-justifying. The longer action continues uninterrupted, the less plausible interruption appears. Stopping would imply that prior movement was premature. Slowing would suggest that confidence was misplaced. Both are treated as greater risks than proceeding. So the system proceeds. Latency compounds silently. Each step adds distance between decision and the reality that should have informed it. That distance is never measured, never displayed, never acknowledged. Speed feels earned. Commitment feels justified. The system advances not because it is certain, but because it has already moved. Movement continues because nothing contradicts it strongly enough to interrupt flow. When feedback arrives that diverges from expectation, it is classified as transient. Noise, an anomaly to be smoothed away until corroboration arrives. But corroboration is also delayed, and by the time it arrives, it too must pass through the same corridor of substitution. Action compounds further. Each committed step increases momentum. Each response narrows the system's ability to reverse without acknowledging the illusion it depends on. Reversal would require recognizing that earlier certainty was constructed, not verified, and that recognition would stall the process. The system avoids that recognition by design. It is not acting blindly. It is acting on a present that no longer exists. Latency becomes structural. It is embedded directly in the act of decision, indistinguishable from speed. The faster the system moves, the more completely substitution replaces confirmation. By the time reality intrudes with enough force to demand attention, thresholds have already been crossed. Commitments have already hardened. Reversal no longer returns the system to its prior state. The consequence is not sudden collapse. It is drift. The system remains operational. Outputs continue. Interfaces remain calm. Performance indicators stay within acceptable bounds because they measure internal consistency rather than external alignment. What degrades is correspondence. Actions increasingly resolve against a past that no longer matches the environment they affect. Corrections arrive too late to inform the decisions that required them. Each adjustment applies to a state the system has already abandoned. The illusion holds because nothing inside the system contradicts it strongly enough to force recognition. Metrics remain stable because they are derived from the same substituted present that guided action. Discrepancy accumulates quietly. Misalignment grows without signal. By the time misalignment becomes visible, it is no longer actionable. Recognition arrives only after relevance has passed. The system can observe divergence, but it can no longer correct for it without undoing accumulated commitment. So divergence is recorded, categorized, and absorbed. The system remains functional because it is internally consistent. It fails only in relation to a reality it no longer references directly. When the mask finally fails, it does not shatter. It dissolves. There is no singular breakpoint, no moment where failure announces itself. Instead, confusion accumulates. Everything functioned as designed. Every step followed procedure. Every response was timely according to the displayed state. Yet outcomes diverge. Latency was never eliminated. It was normalized. The consequence is not catastrophe. It is irreversibility. Once the system has acted on an assumed present, it cannot return to the moment where verification would have mattered. The opportunity to choose differently disappears without alarm, without record, without appeal. Latency cannot be defeated by acceleration. Increasing speed without acknowledgement only deepens the mask. The faster the system operates, the more aggressively it must replace missing information to preserve coherence. Doctrine does not emerge from fixing errors. It emerges from recognizing conditions. Latency must be treated as a domain, not a defect. A space where decisions occur without confirmation, governed by assumptions that must be visible rather than hidden. Masking is not accidental, it is structural. Systems that prioritize seamless continuity trade awareness for decisiveness. They preserve authority by obscuring the boundary between verified reality and substituted present. Doctrine does not remove the corridor, it illuminates it. Only when the system can see where reality ends and projection begins can it govern action deliberately within that space. Without that visibility, speed becomes liability disguised as capability. The system never escapes latency. It only decides whether to see it or let it decide for them.